Howdy, my name is Roger. I love my country, my truck, and Power Platform best practices. If you're serious about becoming a Power Platform solutions architect, join the Architects Accelerator. Now enough of my fake Southern accent, and let's hear from an actual participant of the program, Anna Black.
Hi, I'm Anna Black. I'm the creator of Power Platform Cookbook. I joined the Architects Accelerator because I saw a post from Magdalena and she was so positive and inspired me to join and see what it's all about. Before joining the accelerator, I was avoiding AI. And then when I saw how to apply AI and practice like soft skills, and it just like it really opened my mind to try different things for myself with different tools and everything. It really helps you to evaluate what you know and what you don't know, because when you are doing your job for like so many years, you might be missing a trick and like a different approach. So it really helped me to look at the problems from a different angle. And it was really great to meet with people and be like a part of another community and exchange ideas and so on. So yeah, lots of benefits that did change my life. So thank you.
The link is in the show notes, or go to untethered365.com to learn more.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast. My name is John Russell and I'm here with my co-partner Crab in Crime, Mike Gowland. Hello Mike, how are you? You all right?
Hello John, yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, not too bad. Today we are joined by Pei Mun Lim. Pei has been a systems engineer, DBA, CRM business analyst, functional consultant, QA manager and project program manager. At heart though, she is a mentor, a coach and a teacher and loves to share her learnings and experience with others to become outstanding consultants. She can also be found across various social media outlets on the amazingly named On the Pei Roll. Welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast, Pei. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, John. I am so excited to be here. So I'm really pleased that you've invited me. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast, Pei. Pei, could you tell us a bit about your journey to where you got to now, and how did you get there?
Thank you very much for that, Mike. Yes, so I started my career in the consulting space. It's always been a consulting space as a Microsoft Office trainer. And then I became a systems engineer because my manager had exam vouchers and said, hey, these are expiring. Would you like to have a go at doing the Windows NT 3.51 exam way back in the last century? And obviously I said yes and failed. And I decided not to let that, kind of stop me. So I started taking the exams, and that's how I became the first Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer in Malaysia, which was really fun. That's kind of where I stayed in the consulting space with partners. And when Dynamics CRM came out in about 2005, 2006, I jumped on that one as well. So that's, again, where I stayed with the different roles that you've outlined. And then became project manager because I found out I kind of like telling people what to do. I get away with that quite a bit. And at one point, so by the time I've been in the consulting space doing projects for all sorts of industries, and I got to a point where I wondered whether that was all there was. A project is a project is a project. And after a while, I felt I have done what I wanted to do. And an ex-colleague of mine asked me if I would have a look at Salesforce, which is where I am now. So I made the shift to Salesforce, which is another CRM platform. Different but same, if you know what I mean. Principles are the same, technology is different. And so that's where I stayed for a while. And what I found out was that while there were a lot of people who knew the product, very few knew how to implement the software. So there was no training out there for project delivery, for consulting, for how to properly gather requirements and implement systems that actually serve a business need. And that's when I decided to branch out, put together a curriculum, and start my own business doing training. So that's what I'm doing now. I provide consulting training for Salesforce partners. So I train the consultants how to do discoveries, how to do project delivery, and I also consult with partners in their internal systems, how to manage from statement of work to project requirements and all the way through managed services. So I quite like what I'm doing right now.
Well,
Nice.
it's
That sounds
quite
really
deep. It's quite deep, isn't it? Going that spectrum, right, from statement of work right the way through to managed services.
Yes, because having been in the consulting space for as long as I have, I've been in so many projects that's gone wrong in so many different ways that you can kind of see patterns. I always tell people that it's a bit like Groundhog Day. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's where the main character replays the day over and over again, and he does it so many times that he knows what's going to happen and why things happen. And I think that when you're in an industry for a while and you have that sort of experience, you see patterns, and you can say, if you do this over here, it will stop all these things happening over here. And so because there's no playbook out there for partners on how to run a business, on how to attract talent, on how to move a resource, a person, a professional through in their career to develop the kind of talent and competencies to actually build system well. I don't think there's anyone focusing on that. And I felt that I know some of the basic things that you can, like listening, for example. Very few people listen. And one of the things that usually when I do an introduction, one of the things that I say is a core part of my identity is that I've been a Samaritans volunteer for the last 15 years. And Samaritans is an organization in the UK. It's a crisis hotline for people who are feeling suicidal or going through emotional distress. And so what I found out is I can kind of track on my own personal Gantt chart that when I started my volunteering services, all my projects just started to get green. They just got easier. And when I look back and I think about it, I think it's because I listen better. I coach my team to listen to each other better, to listen to the clients better, to listen to the team managers, the project managers better, and to be able to communicate better. So those sort of skills I felt was not well understood. And so I thought, something as simple as that, just listening, it's so simple and it just makes such a big impact. And that's what I wanted to focus on and what I am focusing on within my masterclasses and training.
Nice. So, yeah, I know, like you've kind of just explained there, how much of an advocate you are for essential skills in consulting, and you've built your business around that. So, what is your definition of active listening?
Active listening, I believe, it's when someone is sharing something with you, and usually it could be a vulnerable thing they're sharing. It could be something as simple as the task that you've assigned to me. I feel it's too much for me. I don't think I'm good enough. Down to, on a personal level, I think that I want to break up with my husband. Whatever that might be, active listening is being in tune with the other person, and you're listening without judgment, really openly, and just accepting everything that they say, not trying to solve their problems, not judging in any way. And it could be a verbal or non-verbal. And I used to say, all of us have experience of a parental figure who can load a lot of judgment in an eyebrow movement. So those are non-verbal, and we've got to be very careful about what we do, what we say, and how we express ourselves. Even eye rolls. Eye rolls are the worst kind of non-verbal because it packs in so much contempt in it, in that I don't think what you say have value. so I'm going to dismiss you. And all of that is contained in an I roll. And so this is what I coach, is to pay attention to ourselves in how we respond to other people and pay attention to other people, and then how to gently call them out to make them aware of how they're presenting. So all of us have been in teams before where you have just one person who just brings everyone down in either what they say or how they say it, and how to change the dynamic of a group and team so that everyone can work better. So that's active listening. It's just being in the same space with someone else and allowing them to just explore in a open and free and safe way.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I've studied up to about level 3 in counselling. So one of the parts there was about active listening, but also we had to sit across from each other in silence and not say anything, and that was actually quite difficult to do. So I think as well as active listening, I think having that space for silence in consulting hopefully should allow the client to kind of say what they really need to say. Do you kind of agree with that as well, Pei?
I do, but could I just ask a question back to you? You said it was very difficult to sit in silence. Can you just share how you felt, and why do you feel that was difficult for you?
I think that was the first time that I'd done that experiment kind of thing, and I felt like I needed to say something. I felt like I just needed to say hello or acknowledge that the person was there. Yeah.
So what you've just identified is silence, and how silence can make people feel quite uncomfortable. And you've probably heard what they say about how that can be used in negotiations to make people feel really stressed and want to break that tension with silence. But so silence is something that we use at Samaritans, and it's within our training that says that there's two types of silence. One is the caller's silence, where they've paused because either they're trying to process what they want to say next, how they want to say what they want to say without you judging them, or they're just really afraid of what you're going to respond with. So that's the caller's silence. Then there's the listener's silence, whereby we think that we must say something to kind of fill it, to fill the gap.
Yeah.
So what we usually say is we have to respect the caller's silence because they're still processing. And so just a small tip for you and for your listeners, who's in a vulnerable conversation and the other person has kind of like paused and you're thinking, what do I say next? They've just dropped a bombshell on me. So a couple of things. One is I usually pause for a couple of breaths, a couple of heartbeats, and then just repeat the last word or two that they've just said. And that will get them talking again. Or if you're not sure and you can't do that, you can just say that was big, and I'm processing what you've just told me.
Yeah.
And that is very non-judgmental and very supportive as well.
And it shows empathy as well, because you're active listening, you're repeating and labeling those emotions back to the person that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
So I think it's really powerful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to get better at listening.
You're a good listener.
No, it's to me. I think it's my like major weakness that I'm like really trying to improve on. Is that sometimes I can find myself solutionizing as people talk to me, and I need to stop doing that. So like somebody will be telling me about a problem, I'm already formulating the fix for that, and actually I just need to stop and listen. But I'm okay with that because I recognise that and I know I'm working on it. I feel like we're going through counselling, John.
This is good. This is good. I had a feeling this was going to be good. I knew it. Just knew it. So could you actually, just on that then, Pei, could you give any example? Could you give any tips on how to be a better active listener?
So you bring a good point, Mike. For us professionals, especially in the consulting space, we are paid to solve problems. And so that's how every fiber of a being we geared to do. We geared to solve a business problem, a technical problem. So it's very difficult to say, I need to stop doing that. So if I frame it in using words that you might understand. So if you think about a discovery, you usually have two parts, which is when we're doing workshops, you have the as is and the to be. So the current state and then the future state. So current state processes is where you try and understand where your client is. How do they currently log a process, like a complaints process or the lead nurturing process, whatever those processes might be. And only then do you go into the to be. Now I understand what your process is like. I can understand where efficiencies can be made. Let me share with you how your future world would look like with the new system we're going to put in and the automations we're going to put in. So we've got the as is and the to be. So if we can just turn off our solutioning minds during the first part, which is the as is, that will allow the other person to explore much more deeper about their pain points, rather than you trying to push them through by saying things like, wouldn't it better if you had reports that could do X, Y, Z? Because that's going down the solutioning bit.
Yeah.
I would kind of hold off on that and just let them just be, just look at me as a therapist and just tell me all your pain, all your tales of woe, all the things that keep you up at night. Go into detail if you need to. So all of that is pure active listening. Obviously, you need to kind of like contain that because, we're being paid by the day and we can't, given the opportunity, I think a lot of people would just take a lot of time. So we just need to be very good at narrowing down the conversation so that we can identify all the bits, all the areas that we can make better for them. So that's, I would say, active listening. Just put a pause on the solutioning. And after that, you can then turn it on and think of all the ways you can make things better for them. So we're not asking you to stop, just asking you to pause it during part one of the discovery process.
And I guess for me, like when I catch myself starting to solutionize, what I try and do is just write down those thoughts, because the solutionizing thoughts are good, but they're just not for that moment in time. So, and for me, part of my problem is writing notes and still listening at the same time, and it's doing more than one thing at the same time, and that sometimes throws me off a little bit.
May I offer a suggestion?
Please do.
So the amazing thing now is we've got AI to help us. And you can, with the client's permission, you can record, you can transcribe, and then you can summarize and interrogate later. You can try. So at the moment, what I use is Claude.ai because they specifically say that they will not be training the LLM on users' data. For privacy point of view, that's really important. Even with that, on the transcript, I will actually anonymize everything before I put it into Claude. And so that would allow me to actually focus and listen in on the conversations better. And then it's through the transcript that I extract all the information. In the past, it was a lot more difficult, but now, we've got tools that make it easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I've actually not checked out Claude, so I'll have to give that a look and see if that can come in handy. So, Pei, what are the common pitfalls to consultants when it comes to engaging with clients and building rapport or negative rapport?
I think we've talked about it a little bit, which is the solutionizing thing. And one of the things that I have found is that when we get really good at what we do, like we become a hammer and everything looks like a nail to us. And it's just a very human thing. So I would go into a workshop and I would have an architect who is, who's a specialist in one area, and they will look at it through that lens and start the solutionizing already. Or I might go in with a different architect with a different lens on, and they would have a different way of looking at things. And so, again, I would have to remind them to just pause it and to listen, because when they start the solutionizing, the conversation we don't explore everything that we should be in that conversation. And therefore, whilst we may address the business problem, we could do a lot better if we were able to listen and understand more. And I always say there is so much in context and nuance that requires us to pay attention. When we barrel in with our hammer as a tool, we lose the context and the nuance, because you think everyone can be fixed by code, or everything can be fixed using this particular app or platform or accelerator, and you're not listening already. And that is, I think, the most common pitfall of those who are good at what they do.
I think also in my experience, this is back in the days when I worked at the BBC, there was a lady there who was really struggling with what we'd implemented, and it was really because the people before me on that project hadn't really listened to her. They had seen her as a bit of a problem, and it's like, she's raised another problem. And I kind of took that in a different way back then, and I actually went and sat with her and just said, I think you've got some valid issues. Let's just sit down together and talk about them. And ever since then, we've been friends ever since. But it was one of the first true moments that I realized that I was a good listener, and that the 90% of the problem that people are raising when they are very vocal about the problems is because they're not being listened to.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I saw a recent post on LinkedIn, Pei, and by the way, I absolutely love your artwork, and I think, and I hope, hopefully, you inspired me actually I did a series on building rapport, and and I'm not saying that you are a good artist or a bad artist, but I'm a bad artist, and I quite like the fact that it's kind of just my mind kind of like splurged onto the iPad. I use like Procreate and a pen and stuff. So yeah, I really love all your stuff that you do. But one of the bits that you talked about in that post was about failure, and how AI and ChatGPT can potentially take away that failure aspect. So what do you think is the most important lesson we can learn about failing?
I believe that the consulting industry is very unforgiving to the new talent who've just come in to learn how to be consultants and how to build systems. The reason for that is utilization. If you make a mistake, we need to fix it. If we need to fix it, it's going to cost the project more, and so on and so forth. So I feel that the consulting industry is quite unkind, and therefore people are afraid to fail. When they're afraid to fail, and when they do, because expectations are so high, it creates a lot of mental health issues. And before the podcast, we were talking about your manager and myself being in the same company many, many years ago. So if I look back at when I started my career in the consulting industry, not one of my peers have stayed on for as long as I have, and many have moved on because of the mental health issues. So there is so much fear about failing that with the onset of AI, there's suddenly, oh my goodness, I now have an assistant that can help me write a snippet of code. I now have ChatGPT that can help me do this or that or this or that, which is great to a certain extent. And it's also really very good at breaking down concepts so that it's easily understood. But don't forget, they learn, or the LLM learns from a body of knowledge, which is not perfect and also is very context driven. This piece of code is great for this particular situation for these reasons. It's not for this other situation that looks similar, but not quite the same and have a few key differences. ChatGPT is unlikely to pull out those nuances for you because you won't know to ask it to and to frame it in your prompt. So I think it's making things harder for the junior or the younger generation to get to where we need them to be to master their craft. Because number one, they were afraid. Again, I'm talking about the consulting industry because that's where I live my life. There is an unkind culture that doesn't allow people to make mistakes in a safe environment. And now you've got this robot AI helper that can help you do things faster, quicker, and you think better. But then you won't know, and no one will be able to tell you because you haven't been able to learn through your own mistakes.
Exactly. I think that's bang on the money. Like everything that you've just said there about the fear of failure within the consulting industry, but also the use of AI large language models and the fact that we don't, if we're not experienced in what we're doing, we don't recognize when those large language models could be wrong. And actually, sometimes we take for granted the responses that come back. And I've used this phrase before, that they can be confidently wrong. And then they will give you that response, that block of code, but actually that's not right. And it takes an experienced coder or experienced consultant, functional consultant, whoever it is, to be able to look at that and say, actually, that's not right, and query it. And there's this difference, and we've talked about it before, about people using AI as a crutch and people using AI to speed up what they would normally do. And I'm not saying that in the way that we shouldn't welcome more people. People shouldn't be using these tools to learn because they're great learning tools. But actually, they do require some understanding and critical thinking around the responses that you get back. Because if you just take it for granted, it will most likely be wrong. And like you said, you need to add all that context into your prompt if you're going to prompt it for something.
And I think the other part as well, Mike, the other bit of context is the threat of utilization over the top.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a junior consultant coming in who might not necessarily know how to do something technically, you've got the pressure of utilization, which in my view shouldn't be the consultant's pressure. That should be the pressure should be set somewhere else in the pipeline. It shouldn't be down to the consultant to ensure that they are 70 to 80% utilized every week. Or more. Or they should be proactive. Yes, I agree with that, but it's not their responsibility. And if you have that context and then you've got access to these tools, well, it's common sense in a normal person's brain to think, well, actually, I could go a bit faster here. I don't really know how to do that. ChatGPT probably does. I'm going to use it. I can see why people do it.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So on that same post, Pei, you talked about data, meaning, context, and wisdom, and you drew a diagram, and it was a kind of triangle pyramid kind of thing. It reminded me of when I was doing counselling, learning about counselling, and we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, and I think it's there's so many synonyms between what you were saying there and getting the foundations right, and how you kind of iterated through that. It was great.
Thank you. In my head, I didn't see it quite in the same way. The reason why I drew it in a triangle was because I wanted to show what the progression looked like between data, information, knowledge, and wisdom in the context of AI. So I would see data as, I don't know, the ones and zeros that are in the superhighway, I guess. And then information would be where things are put together, and it's sentences, it's data structures, it's tables, it's audio, it's whatever, all the data. And then you add more context, and then you just kind of go up to more meaningful knowledge, which is wisdom, and a wisdom to know when to do something, when not to do something. And I was just trying to find a way to visualize that progression. So I didn't want to say that you have to master data before you go on to the next level. It was more trying to say, this is what everyone should be progressing towards. And if I were to, I don't know, talk to a robot, an AI, say, if you truly want to be sentient, maybe it is to try and understand what wisdom looks like. Because I believe that where we've got to right now, where AI has got to right now, is just where knowledge is. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So, Pei, have you listened to the podcast before?
No, I haven't.
You haven't? Okay. So we have this regular segment on the podcast. It's called Uncomfortable Corner.
Uncomfortable Corner.
So, Pei, when was the last time you felt uncomfortable, whether that was in or out of work? Explain how you felt, how you managed to get through it, and what did you learn what did you learn from it, and what would you maybe do differently or the same next time if you're in a similar position?
Thank you for that uncomfortable question, Mike.
That's all right.
So
you can't say being on this podcast either; it doesn't count.
It's no. It's been fun. I like doing podcasts. So since running my own business, I found that my audience have begun to be more global, because since the pandemic, it was much easier to go on Zoom. Before the pandemic, I would have said trying to do a consulting masterclass remotely just doesn't work, because a lot of it, we were doing it in person, and I felt when I'm doing the training, I needed to show people how to read the energy of a room. When we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're talking about reading and understand social cues and energy and how people are with nonverbals. But come the pandemic, and I was able to switch it around. So now a lot of my audience is everywhere. So I've got Salesforce partners from Australia, the Philippines, India, a lot from the States as well. So one of the things that made me that caused me discomfort happened last November, where somebody in my group was from the States. So having been in the consulting professional working life in the UK for the last 30 years, I could have confidently say that I've encountered almost anything in the working world here. What I didn't account for is how the race element in the States is viewed very differently than over here. And a discussion at one of my sessions suddenly put me in a situation where the energy within the room was spiked, because there was accusation of racial and microaggression that was directed at some of the other students. And it was something that I've never, ever handled before. And it made me really, really uncomfortable because I did not know how to navigate the situation. And so after the session, I reached out to different people within the group, and it was an international group, and talked to them about what happened, how they saw it, how they saw how I dealt with it, and what could I have done better. And what happened next was subsequently, in 2 months later, I found myself in Boston and Washington for a conference, and I decided that I needed to educate myself. So I went to the museum, the National African American Museum, I believe, and I just went through everything. I just read through everything. And then in the Salesforce world, we've got conferences called Dream-In conferences, which are community-led. There's one very specific one called Dream-In in Color, which is held by the Black community. And I was just there last month. And I went specifically to learn more and to have really, really candid conversation with the experience, because obviously it's much more different than in the UK. So the Blacks in America have slavery, and the Blacks in the UK are mostly of the Caribbean descent, and the experience is different. And as my business becoming more global and my reach, I needed to understand them a lot more so that I would know how to handle myself and that situation again in the future. So that was really, really uncomfortable to have that kind of, accusation flying around and me not knowing what to do. So there you go.
It sounds like you've done an amazing job to, educate yourself better on that, though, right? So
Definitely.
We make mistakes, but if you learn from it and you increase your understanding, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Pei. I think that's all we got time for this week. You can find Pei on LinkedIn and on various social media sites by the username on the Pei Roll, which I think is amazing. Links to resources mentioned in this episode will be in the show notes. Music today was provided by Ken Like Fit. You can find his music on Spotify, the link to which you can find in this episode's show notes. Additional music used in this episode is credited in the show notes as well. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. We would also really appreciate it if you gave us a follow on LinkedIn, and if you're really enjoying the podcast, please give us a review on your chosen podcast platform. Thank you. This has been Sprint Zero. We've been John Russell. Say goodbye, John.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Pei Mun Lim. Say goodbye, Pei.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
And I've been Mike Gowland. We'll see you in the next episode. Love you, John.
Love you too, mate.
Love you, Pei.
Thank you.
I'm Sean. I run the Architects Accelerator. It's an 8-week training program to help you become a solutions architect. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how awesome it is. We're just going to hear from previous participants.
My name's Mike Colling.
My name is Sander.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
Hi, I'm Luke.
Hi, I'm Callum. I work as a senior functional consultant.
I signed up for this because it sounded something I hadn't seen anywhere else.
And that's what I liked about this course, is that we were focusing about taking the right requirement and proposing to the customer the right solution.
It's showing how to use the whole platform and how to build better solutions that could last a long time.
I don't have a background in software, and given that it's changing so fast every single day, I needed a guided way of learning. If the solution architect is the direction I want to go, I have taken something from every day of those classes and have applied them to my work.
Found it really useful and I really enjoyed it.
Use promo code SPRINT0 to get $50 off.